Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, it is my honor to stand here and ask you for your support of this compromise budget that goes to great lengths to meet the priorities of this Commonwealth and its residents. This is a fiscally responsible budget that dictates substantial resources, priorities that we all need, education and human services in Pennsylvania. For fiscal year 2013-14, this general fund spending plan is $28.376 billion. This general fund spending of this amount represents a $645 million increase, or a 2.3% increase over last year's available funds. This is a fiscally responsible budget that does not raise taxes on individuals and yet still provides for the priorities of the Commonwealth. For the members' information, this same budget passed the Pennsylvania Senate today by a vote of 33-17 in a bipartisan manner. In a little bit, I'm going to go through the many highlights of this budget, but I want to provide you, the members of the House, with some facts and not fiction regarding this budget. First, this budget and the accompanying legislation dedicates the most state tax dollars ever for education. The most state tax dollars ever for education. We have replaced the $1 billion we lost in federal stimulus funds and now spend $10 billion, or 41% of this $28 billion budget, on education. Moreover, the amendments in the Senate added an additional $22.5 for our distressed school districts. And even on top of that, the accompanying code bills will make a commitment to redirect. And I hope the legislators from the City of Brotherly Love are listening, because we're going to redirect $45 million, which were owed to our federal government, to the Philadelphia School District. And it will also allow the city to redirect $120 million of their own local sales tax to the School District of Philadelphia. These funds will be contingent on the district continuing to reform their operations and improve the management of the largest school district in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Another fiction that you may hear about is related to the idea of tax cuts for corporations. I stand here proud of the fact that this majority and Governor Corbett has reduced the capital stock and franchise tax by $900 million since the governor took office. I know that those improvements to our business climate have made the state a more business-friendly state and helped create 100,000 jobs under this administration in the private sector. However, this budget also recognizes the fiscal challenges ahead. We know that we have a growing pension liability that needs to be addressed. Until we do, we need to properly fund our pension system. To help us meet that growing obligation, this budget slows the elimination of the capital stock and franchise tax, so we will have more money to help our school districts meet the growing pension obligation. We are still committed to eliminating this tax, but we must first make sure we reform our pension system to guarantee long-term sustainability and pay in the required funds to make those systems solvent. You will also hear a little bit about an issue settled in this chamber. I know you'll hear all about the magical severance tax that we will solve all of our fiscal problems. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not the case. When you hear those fiction story tales, you should keep in mind the wisdom that went into Act 13. In this budget, you will see a budget programs that are now receiving funds from the Oil and Gas Lease Fund. This is a great example of needing to understand all the funding streams supported throughout Commonwealth programs. I know some will leave out the millions of dollars the Commonwealth now receives from the Oil and Gas Lease Fund. But that is not a complete picture if you do that. We also heard from members that at their request to add additional monies for our host city here in our state capital. There's an additional $5 million in this budget for the city of Harrisburg to help them provide municipal services for the Commonwealth buildings. The final budget fund priorities in this order: education, health and human services, environment and agriculture, public safety, job creation and economy, government transparency and accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, this budget increases basic education funding by $122 million, establishes a record high $10 billion total state tax dollars invested in K-12. It also provides $22.5 billion for our distressed school districts, provides a 9% funding increase for the Library Access Program to help libraries across the Commonwealth share over the 22 million titles, provides an increase of $6.4 million for Head Start, pre-K counts, and other early childhood programs. This budget and amendment adds $5 million for early intervention to children ages 3 to 5 with developmental disabilities. It also increases funding for mobile science centers, provides $3 million for grants to career and technical schools to purchase new equipment so the Commonwealth can expand career and technical educational opportunities. This budget adds additional money to the Safe Schools Initiative. This budget provides for an additional increase to the adult and family literacy line. Our Penn State University is receiving an additional $2 million for the Pennsylvania College of Technology. Then the University of Penn is getting additional money for rural education outreach. Lincoln University, and I know we have members in this House that are graduates of Lincoln University, and I hope they will support the additional $2 million, which is an 18% increase for the fiscal year 2013. Community colleges are receiving an additional $1 million for the Community College Capital Fund. In our Human Health and Services Department, increases for funding in the Department of Health by over $1.5 million. Ladies and gentlemen, on both sides of the aisle have made it a priority to make sure that we have funding for cystic fibrosis, hemophilia, sickle cell, trauma prevention, epilepsy support, ALS support services, Tourette's syndrome, and also biotechnology research. This budget makes sure we fund health priorities such as lupus, poison control centers, and our diabetes programs. This budget, ladies and gentlemen, adds $20 million to further reduce the waiting list for individuals with intellectual disabilities. This is the second year in a row that our governor and this House has made this mandatory. This will help 1,000 families throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This budget gives a 20% increase for autism intervention and services and adds $26 million to reduce the waiting list for services to persons with disabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you're all interested in the 11% increase for domestic violence centers and 14% increase for rape crisis centers. This budget adds $14 million for child care services to reduce the waiting list. Our environment and agriculture. For this fiscal year, county conservation districts will receive a total of $8.4 million through a combination of the general fund appropriation and Act 13 fees. $8.4 million. This is not only a restoration, but this is an increase of over $2 million. A 31% increase. We can thank Act 13 for that, ladies and gentlemen. Adds $4.6 million to the Department of Agriculture programs and restores funding for ag research, hardwood research, ag education and promotion, food marketing and research, Pennsylvania preferred programs, and other ag programs. And I know many of you contacted this office and requested money for the heritage parks. It adds $2.25 million so that we can continue to lead our community conservation and revitalization efforts. It provides for a 5% increase to DEP for environmental program management and 2% increase for protections of operations. The Department of Environmental Protection, ladies and gentlemen, will receive $697 million in total funding. This is a combination, ladies and gentlemen, of $61 million or a 10% increase in program spending over the fiscal year 2012 and 2013. Ladies and gentlemen, I know many of your districts are protected by our state police. This budget provides state police with an additional $14.7 million to help to train close to 300 new state troopers and 90 civilian dispatchers. The Office of the Attorney General. The Office of the Attorney General is receiving an additional $9 million. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an increase for the Attorney General Office to expand public safety programs like local drug task forces, child predator, interceptions units, and mobile street crime unit. Includes a $1.5 million increase for state police forensic lab to expedite the review of evidence collected at crime scenes. Increases by $4.5 million for violence prevention programs. You talk about job creation and the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, this budget contains no new taxes on Pennsylvania residents. It restores funding for new choices and new options. We all have neighbors that have benefit from this program. I am proud to stand here and tell you that we were able to restore funding for that outstanding program. Allocates funding for a pilot program through Pennsylvania Workforce Investment Boards to help our unemployed Pennsylvania veterans find work. An outstanding program. Adds funding for marketing to attract tourists and business. Pennsylvania First, accredited zoos, and rural leadership training. From Philadelphia to Erie, our tourism is back in business. You talk about government transparency and accountability. Well, it includes a 23% increase in funding for the Office of Open Records. Provides the Auditor General a 6% increase for IT modernization project and general government operations. I'm sure the Auditor General appreciates that. This budget also increases a 6% increase for the State Ethics Commission. As we debate this bill, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, I really would like to put politics aside and come to a bipartisan support for this budget. It's a good budget, but it spends what we're taking in, and we made our priorities clear. This is a responsible budget and one that does right for the people of Pennsylvania, and I ask both sides of the aisles for their support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.